budgeted for as well, but that we should also have a shadow cabinet. What the president is proposing right now, ideally, as per the courts that rule that these initiatives cannot come from the president, which I do not agree with, even though we respect the decision of the courts. I think this is a matter that should also be taken back and prosecuted through a public participation decision. It cannot come through the presidency. And as I said, these are his ideas, his proposals, which are rightful, but this is not the process that should ideally be followed. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of ministers coming here for questioning, again, I agree with those members who said that this will end up rendering our committees to be irrelevant, because part of the work of the committees that they do is for them to be able to question ministers, for ministers to appear before them. If we start bringing the ministers here, then the committees become irrelevant. Again, back to BBI. BBI's proposal was that 50% of the ministers that we do have ought to be members of parliament. Through this process, it would have been so much easier for you to be able, for us to be able to question ministers and for them to be able to be held accountable. This other process that the president is proposing, in my view, I think it's a backdoor and a shortcut towards bringing back BBI into parliament, which should not be the case. Mr. Speaker, on the oversight fund, again, I agree with my fellow colleagues that ideally this should be a parliamentary oversight fund. Our colleagues here brought a very good motion, which was committed to a committee that is reviewing it, and I think that's the process we should follow, because there are proposals on Article 24A to D, which covers the NGCDF, the NGAF fund, and the additional fund on a special fund, including the oversight fund, is something that we should actually give priority to make sure that it is fully enacted into law, so that then this becomes a parliamentary oversight fund that covers both the Senate and the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, therefore, what I'd just like to say as I conclude is that as a House, we should not be encouraging having such very pertinent constitutional reforms coming through opinions and memos, because we will be setting a very dangerous precedent in this country. This ought to follow the right procedure. And therefore, even as the JLAC committee members then proceed to have a look at this matter, I want to encourage them. It doesn't matter whether you're from the Kenya Kwanza side or the Azimio side, do the right thing, set the right precedents, because as my good senior once said, Honorable now Governor Orengo, is that the government eats its own children, and this will one day eat you if you're not careful with it. I submit.
The Honorable Ndindi Njoro, Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and for giving me this opportunity to give my views in regards to the communication by the President. And as you said before, this is a general debate. We are just giving our views. There is no voting yet. And I'll talk about just a few issues. Number one, I am very elated by the President's view, which corresponds with the view of this House, that CDF is so important an institution and a fund that it can no longer be left hanging to the whims of the people. And especially it cannot be left to be bullied from all sides by people who actually do not understand the importance of this fund insofar as the Kenyan people are concerned. NGCDF is not an MP's kitty. NGCDF is a community fund, and it has been a very helpful and far-reaching fund in this country. Mr. Speaker, many countries actually have come to benchmark and also implemented such a program like the one we run in this country. And if you go across every corner of this country, the many projects that we see that are complete, that the Kenyan people are already getting value from them, majority of them are NGCDF sponsored. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if you go around the country, you could hardly identify a stored project that is funded by NGCDF. because the processes are very thorough, and especially the monies that are put aside for development that fund is protected, and only 5% is actually left for other things other than development. That is the recurrent expenditure of the office that we call admin. Mr. Speaker, today I came to this house late because I was in Kiharu yesterday and today, and I'm still talking about NGCDF. We have been able to launch a program we are calling Kiharu Masomo Bora program, which is covering all our day schools in Kiharu. In total, 14,000 of them, 14,000 learners, and 60 institutions, sorry. It is covering 60 institutions and 14,000 learners in our day schools. And through NGCDF, we have been able to optimize the fees, the requirements of the school, and the money that is required, to the point where we have been able to scale down the fees payable by the parents per student to only 1,000 per term. Only 1,000 per term, Mr. Speaker. And the way we have done this is to optimize the supplies that schools get, so that if we pull CDF money and resources together, then we are able to aggregate all the supplies in terms of, for example, stationery and other educational needs, and also meals. Out of only that 1,000, because of the help of Kiharu NGCDF and other stakeholders, Mr. Speaker, all the learners will be able to take 10 o'clock tea or uji in school. They'll be able to get lunch, which is actually not just githeri every day, but only 3 days githeri and 3 days rice. And we are also providing lunch, including 10 o'clock meal, uji or tea, even on Saturdays, so that all the learners can remain in school actually 6 days a week. I'm talking about Kiharu because this is an NGCDF project, Mr. Speaker. And there are many such kind of projects across the country where, because of the thorough oversight by these members of this House, that these monies are able to reach to the corners where actually the people need government support and government resources. And therefore, putting NGCDF and anchoring the same in the Constitution is a very noble cause, because some of the projects that we undertake, like the one I've just talked about, like Kiharu Masomo Bora program, will need to be sustainable. And for sustainability of the NGCDF programs and projects, then we need to be sure that this kitty is here for posterity for many years to come, because the kind of plans we do are not just plans for today, but plans for tomorrow and the other day and next year and to the future. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to say something about Senate Oversight Fund. Mr. Speaker, I have a privilege to be serving this House and the Kenyan people in the Budget Committee. We appropriate over 370 billion Kenya shillings that goes to our counties. And Mr. Speaker, some of these monies can unlock our local economies, our village economies, our taxonomies across all counties, if these funds are expended in a manner that will stimulate the economy. But unfortunately, the bulk of this money goes into paying salaries and goes into paying recurrents, the ones that survive after most of it, of course, takes off through the leadership. Mr. Speaker, we need men and women who will be able to be the eyes of Kenyans in regards to how counties expend this public money. And therefore, it will go a long way into giving our senators enough strength in terms of funds to move around, to question, to do all manner of audit. Not the audit in terms of the books, but audit in terms of the projects conducted or undertaken by counties, even in regards to the value for money, and in regards to the use in terms of how these programs help the Kenyan people. And therefore, it is good for us to extend this fund to the senators. They are doing a very good job. We need to support them so that they are able to look after the bulk of the money, close to 400 billion, that we said to our counties. In fact, if county monies were able to be expended the way we do CDF, Mr. Speaker, the national government would be left with very little to do, because this is so much money in our villages, supporting education, supporting healthcare, supporting all other functions that we conduct, and also that would be conducted by the county governments. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is a good thing that we support our senators, give them the tools they need to conduct thorough oversight to our counties, Mr. Speaker, because it is important. Mr. Speaker, the issue of two-third gender rule and the other issue about the office of the leader of opposition, I want to talk broadly about the two in regards to democracy. Mr. Speaker, our democracy has come from far, and we are growing, we are becoming a champion in the region. And looking back, Mr. Speaker, even to the inception of democracy itself, the democracies that actually are anchored properly are democracies that grew after countries developed state machinery or bureaucracy, and therefore democracy came after the state actually existed. And countries that actually have democracy coming before the state, they never experience stability. But countries that experience first a strong bureaucracy, a strong state, then democracy comes to check, they usually thrive. And Mr. Speaker, you cannot check a state that does not exist. And therefore it is important, even as we talk about strengthening our democracy through the two issues that the President communicated, that we realize that for a democracy to thrive, a state needs to be strong, number one, but also number two, for us to move out of the politics of static, toxic identity, we need to create other fluid identities. Currently, our politics is domiciled on the basis of tribe and ethnicity, which is toxic, and there is no movement. But when we create industrialization, we create a good economy, Mr. Speaker, then we have other identities, like where we work. We create other identities, like the level of education, which is fluid, because anyone can move from this area to the other in terms of identities. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think we are in the right direction by first checking on our economy, so that even as we build on that in terms of governance, then our democracy will be premised on an economy that drives, and the people who are already engaged in being active agents of our economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I submit.
Honorable Dindi Njoro, I want to call upon all MPs who are coming the first time to visit Kiaru and see by themselves what CDF is doing for Kiaru people under your oversight. And I think as a person who has seen it, I know it is good. The gentleman from Nyando, the Honorable Jared Okello.
I thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Allow me from the outset to welcome back my colleagues and the Office of the Speaker and the Secretariat in general, having been at home during our recess for the last 2 months. On the same breath, Honorable Speaker, allow me to express our collective frustration and resentment as a House on this matter of NGCDF. Before we went home for our recess, Honorable Speaker, the CS Treasury did make an undertaking that from the 9th day of December 2022, 2 billion shillings were to be expended to our accounts every week, which by now, Honorable Speaker, our accounts should be having, every individual constituency account should be having 80 million shillings, Honorable Speaker. The Cabinet Secretary has walked on all the promises, walked back on all the promises he has made, and up to until the time we showed up in Mombasa during our induction and staged a small go-slow, we had not received anything, Honorable Speaker. This House is a co-equal branch of government with the executive and together with the judiciary. This House has gone into lengths to midwife and legislate pieces from the executive without any delay or any ordinary delay. But here we are, executive makes promises to us that are never respected, Honorable Speaker. Today, they will be coming out asking us to pass the supplementary budget, number 1, supplementary budget 1 of 2022-2023. I want to ask this House to refuse to pass this supplementary budget until the entire NGCDF monies are wired into our accounts. Why do I say this? Most of our children who solely depend on the bursaries are still holed up at homes without any recourse. And we are here passing every piece of legislation and every agenda from the executive. I want this House to stand strong and refuse this supplementary budget until all the monies are submitted. Back to the course, Honorable Speaker. There are 4 issues that have been raised by William Samoei Ruto as regards the memorandum to the Speaker of the National Assembly. And that is on oversight, Office of the Official Opposition, NGCDF, and the gender representation, Honorable Speaker. Now, if you read Article 255 of our Constitution, apart from the NGCDF, all these must go through a referendum. All of them, Honorable Speaker. And NGCDF, as you did allude to, Honorable Speaker, during your contribution, there is nothing illegal about NGCDF. There is nothing unconstitutional about the NGCDF Act of 2015. But we still want to strive to anchor it in law so that it can be solidified in a way that no court in this republic would once again tinker with it or throw it out or disturb it, as we have seen in the recent past, Honorable Speaker. So I'm very much afraid that if we carry out an omnibus legislation and include NGCDF in the proposals as advanced by the President, then the NGCDF as an act may face, the wrath together with all these 3 that have been presented by the President. And therefore, I ask that let us decipher issues. If it is about NGCDF, let it be a stand-alone advancement of proposed legislation. Let us not lump it up with the rest that probably are likely to face a problem with the judiciary branch of our government, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I would ask that even as JLAC retreats to look into this, let NGCDF be a stand-alone. Let it not be together with the rest, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it shouldn't be lost on us that why BBI's fate died at the Supreme Court is because the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, did gazette a team that was going around the country to collect views as far as changing certain constitutional issues happened then. And therefore, the mere fact that the president gazetted that team, the entire BBI died in the hands of the 7 judges. Now, President Uhuru only gazetted and did not do anything else. We have been invited by William Ruto by way of a letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly. And not only that he has written a letter, he has included a memorandum, and he has also suggested areas where these changes should be made. I'm very much afraid that if this goes before a court of law, and indeed it will, through the civic society or the civil society, this thing will be dead on arrival, just because President Ruto is putting his hands in the changes of our Constitution, Honorable Speaker. And we also need to see the amendments for what they are. There has been a proposal to bring in cabinet secretaries in this House. What does that therefore mean? That the work of oversight committees are going to be dead. Because what will be the role of PSC? What will be the role of PIC? If those cabinet secretaries can personally present themselves before this House, Honorable Speaker. And this is an elaborate process of killing the role of the opposition. You do understand that when you talk about PIC, when you talk about PSC, and all the oversight committees, it is only the opposition that occupy and dominate these committees, Honorable Speaker. And by so killing these oversight committees, you inevitably kill the opposition. So on this other hand, we are being conned to get into this trap so that we can allow ministers to come here, killing the oversight roles, but at the same time we are told, by the way, we also need the role of official opposition leader in the House. I mean, I think we are smarter than that, Honorable Speaker, to be brought into this conundrum. Honorable Speaker, this is something that will go before the Republic, and Kenyans will have to voice their concerns on this matter. I do not know how prepared Kenyans are to increase 100 female gender into this House, 100 of them, and how that feeds into the national budget at a time when the country is suffering and not less than a cabinet secretary in charge of Treasury has come out to say this country is broke. And you are also saying at the same time that let us bring in 100 more women into the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, in order to cure this, because again, it is important that this House is balanced, why can't we compel political parties that during their nomination processes have equal number of women as those of men inside this House, so that at the end of the day, we do not lump up more additional budgets into the House, but only cure the number of women to be brought into this House by way of political parties, Honorable Speaker. And by that, we are going to adhere to the law, and we are going to sidestep this idea of pumping in additional 10 billion shillings into the budget of this National Assembly or of the Senate, Honorable Speaker. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. The Honorable David Gikaria, the person under whose charge our environment is protected.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and my good friend, Honorable Kaluma. First of all, Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this motion. And Honorable Speaker, when you're giving your remarks or you're giving your contributions, Honorable Speaker, I really followed keenly. And to some extent, you did convince me on one of the aspects as to what you alluded to, the fact that we need to look at these things critically so that, again, it doesn't land in the courts. And again, it is thrown out just because of a few legal technicalities. Honorable Speaker, the other thing that I agree with you is that you did say that we look, this is only the President is inviting us to give our views on what he thinks. And it's not a bill. It's just a request by the President. Look at this. And of course, our President is a gentleman. He's not Mr. Know-it-all. He will pick a few things from you. He'll pick a few things from me. The next, he'll pick a few from Beatrice and others. And he will say yes to the fact that if we are actually true in a presidential system, then how do you bring in opposition in Parliament? And this is something that the President is going to look critically into those things and be able to make a decision by the time now when it comes to the actual legislation. The last thing that I also agree with you, Honorable Speaker, is that we should look at this thing devoid of politics. Let us avoid politics when you are discussing this so that you can be able, because sometimes we play to the gallery, we forget about what this House is meant to do. And I totally agree with you that, Honorable Speaker, we need to look at this request devoid of politics so that we can be able to give our best. Did the President mean well when he made this request and through a memorandum? And I want to say yes. He meant well for this country. He has seen what is ailing this country. It doesn't matter. He has just given us a proposal. It is for us now to improve on what he has given us so that we can be able to achieve what he intends to bring to this country. Thirdly, the third is that the President himself has checked and seen what is ailing this country, and he wants to bring those changes so that we can be able to. But the first thing that, Honorable Speaker, I want to address is, and it has been said here by different speakers, as to whether we need to have a referendum. And Honorable Speaker, and I've learned a lot from you, from Honorable Otiende and others, is that, Honorable Speaker, if you look at Article 255, Article 255 gives us the amendment of this Constitution. And, Honorable Speaker, it says a proposed amendment to this Constitution shall be enacted in accordance with Article 256, which I think it is the through Parliament, or 257, which is a referendum, and approved in accordance with Clause 2 by a referendum, where it gives the procedure of what collect 25%, some millions of signatures, things like that. If the amendment relates in any of the following mandates. And Honorable Speaker, this is where we really need to look at as members of Parliament, so that we also look at, and we also, even as we are talking, Honorable Speaker, this country has become a country of politics almost every other day. That we have just finished. Again, now we need to be, so that again we try to see, do we go the parliamentary way, so that we avoid the whole of politics that comes with that in a referendum. Honorable Speaker, one of the issues that has to go for a referendum is that if it touches on the supremacy of this Constitution, and that is under 255 1A. 2, the territories, of course. I'm going to look at C, the sovereignty of the people. D, the national values and principles of governance, referred in Article 10, 2A to D. Honorable Speaker, I'm not going to bring that. E, the Bill of Rights. F, the terms of office of the President. G, the independence of the judiciary, and it goes on. The functions of Parliament. I, the objects, principle, and structure of devolved government, and it goes on and it goes on. Honorable Speaker, it is important for us to look at if this proposed will need to go to a referendum, or we need to address and do the amendments here. And those are the critical issues that we need to look at. Secondly, Article, of course, 255(2) gives the process of how a referendum should be undertaken. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, what we need to ask ourselves is that as the President is doing this, we go back to the Constitution again, Honorable Speaker, and we look at the authority of the President. That is enshrined in this Constitution. We look at also the functions of the President. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, we look at the decisions of the President. Again, these are going to inform us as we look at what the President has proposed and whether he's, he's legislating, or whether it is also a requirement by law that he can be able to do what he has just done. And Honorable Speaker, if we look at Article 131, Honorable Speaker, Article 131, Article 131, 1E, is that the President, that is Article 131, says the President, and E says is a symbol of national unity. Is he doing this for purposes of individual gains or as a symbol of to bring a national unity? Yes, Honorable Speaker, I think that is what the President is doing. If we look at the same Article 131, 2C, Honorable Speaker, it says that the President shall promote and enhance the unity of this nation. And again, Honorable Speaker, when I look at the proposals that he has brought, all the proposals are there. That is exactly what the President has been given a mandate by this Constitution to be able to undertake. And those are the things at the end of the day is what we will be checking so that we can be able to. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, is Article 132, and those are the functions of the President. And what is this, the function of the President? Under Article 132, 1C, the President shall, and it says, once in a year. Let me go to the particular one where I want to refer, is Article 132, 1C, subclause 1, or Roman 1, sorry. And it says, once a year, the President report in an address to the nation on all the measures taken and the progress achieved in realization of the national values referred to. And that is also a function that, and has the President done that, Honorable Speaker? Yes, that is what has been done, Honorable Speaker. If you look at Article 132, 2B, and it says the President shall nominate and with the approval of the National Assembly, appoint any and dismiss. Article 132, 2B is the Attorney General in accordance with Article 152. And what is the Attorney General's function? Is to advise, is a legal advisor to government and the President. And I doubt whether the Attorney General has not done his part to be able to give the President that aspect of legislation. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, is 132.4, where it says, Honorable Speaker,
Honorable David Gikaria, thank you for ending your presentations. You are reminding me of the late Honorable William Chepkut, who would recite all those provisions without reference. Would we have the gentleman from Kitutu Masaba, the Honorable Clive Gesario?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to also contribute to these proposals by the President. Mr. Speaker, I will start with the most touching element here, which is the NGCDF. All speakers who've spoken here today have spoken on the importance of NGCDF. We'll continue to reiterate that this is not money for members of parliament. We are actually here as representatives of constituencies, and while we stand to speak here, we are speaking on behalf of our NGCDF committees back in the constituencies. We are here to ensure that those committees and the fund managers have funds to provide services to the constituents. So having these in the Constitution is priority. And we thank the President for also believing in the same, that the NGCDF committees need these monies in their accounts. The government or Treasury did promise to be releasing 2 billion weekly. That was in December. Actually, it was in November. To date, only 10 billion has been released. The financial year is coming to a close. We should stand firm as a house for the sake of our constituents. For the Senate oversight, we've been having the new constitution in force for the last 10 years. I would just like to ask whether this is a new role or it has been there for the last 10 years for the senators, for us to decide on how to frame it. Because if we are going to say it's an oversight, the question will be, haven't senators been oversighting the counties or not? The NGAF goes without saying. It plays a key role. CDF, NGCDF alone cannot touch everyone. There are some elements, key elements, that it leaves. The vulnerables, the women, and the young girls. Matters that are close to our women. We need to let them be handled by the women. So as we ensure the NGCDF is in the Constitution, GAF cannot be left behind. Implementation of the 2/3 gender rule. This is a dicey one. We have daughters, we are husbands, we know the importance of having women in leadership and in all positions to help shape this country. But how we reach there, we need to be extremely careful. We need our girls also to grow up knowing that they can be competitive. I would like to look at it differently, maybe. Instead of saying we come nominate them, why not say, on the women rep position, the first 47 go through, we look in the house what's the difference, and then the top countrywide in the balance, fits in the balance, and balances the equation. That way, our girls will grow up knowing that it's not easy and they are competitive. Academically, currently in schools, girls are almost outshining the boys. Let's not make it any difference out here. That is the only way we'll have our daughters fit in this society without thinking they're getting handouts. The position of leader of opposition, as many have said, we are a presidential system. We have to make our choices. Either hybrid, let even those contesting for presidency contest for parliament. When the one who wins then can resign, and the one who loses takes his official role as the leader of opposition in the House. As we sit here, I've listened to leader of majority, sometimes making jokes about this side. We meeting the people is part of our role. This house, you can't sit that side and say you're in government. No, you're in parliament. All legislators are here to play their roles. Representation, legislation, and oversight. Our leader of majority, Kimani Ichung'wah, should actually be our leader in ensuring that the government performs in our role of oversight. There is no responsibility of him coming here to defend the executive. He should ensure that the executive delivers on the mandate. He actually should not even be called leader of majority. He should be called the leader of the House. But the moment we start here and we are throwing rocks back and forth, that as we are meeting the people out there, then we'll say it's the way we would like to choose it. We can meet the people in the markets. We can also arrange prayer meetings. They are all meetings meeting the people. The agenda is the same. So, the leader of official opposition in the current setting of the Constitution has no place. And there's no way we are going to sneak it in. Parliament oversight on executive, as one speaker said here, it will be a tragedy that one day the government wins, the president wins, has a minority in the House, and then we've said his ministers to be brought here. He will need a lot of oxygen out there to resuscitate them. They will literally be lynched. That is the role of committees, and we need to leave it there. Unless we say we want to do away with committees, we have no business having cabinet secretaries here. The committees are powerful enough, they are representative enough to represent this House. With the numbers in this House, you will never have enough time to even interrogate a minister. So the best way is let the ministers be dealt with at our departmental levels. There are no shortcuts. If these are to come into the floor of the House, let them come as separate bills. So that if either falls on the way, let it fall by itself. Otherwise, we risk, if we bring all this together, NGCDF will be on its deathbed. Something we as parliamentarians should not agree to, should not allow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is Honorable Joseph Emate, MP for Turkana Central, in the House? Not there. Give me Honorable Dido Raso, the Vice Chair of the Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this memorandum by His Excellency the President. From the onset, I want to say that Kenya is a unitary state, and the President is the head of this state. By dint of the Constitution, the President is the most powerful person in the land. Those powers, it is we, the people of Kenya, who have given him. He can use his powers to get things done by hubris, or he can maneuver his way to get things done. But, Honorable Speaker, this President, who himself has been a member of the National Assembly, representing Eldoret North for many years, has decided to approach the House to tell this House that, honorable members, I think there's lacuna in our constitution that we need to think differently. We need to get things done. That is attempting to approach this House to have a conversation. And the conversation before us, as my honorable colleague who just spoke before me talked about the National Government Constituency Development Fund. He tried to extol at length how useful this fund is, the importance of this fund, that without the CDF, that we as members of parliament representing single constituencies are sitting lame ducks. So for that reason, I think it is incumbent upon us that you cannot have your cake and eat it. The president has touched on the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. The honorable ladies in this House, they will approach their constituents, much larger than single constituency that many of us in this House represent. And a lot is expected of them, including the CDF bursaries, including taking mothers and fathers to hospital, including taking orphans to schools, and even buying wheelchairs sometimes. That takes a lot of resources, and it calls for a lot of strengthening of that particular office if we really must make something out of it. Honorable Speaker, to fix the conundrum of CDF, what the president has said, guys, let us put it in the Constitution so that the vicious litigants year in, year out will not be taking Parliament to courts. The same thing, Honorable Speaker, on the issue of the Senate Oversight Fund. The senators of Kenya oversight 47 counties that are annually given about 370 billion shillings. That is a lot of money. Without oversight, without anybody raising a finger, that appears to be money going down the drain. We all come from counties that are year in, year out, are raking in billions, but you don't see where that money goes. Somebody must look at these resources and tell the citizenry that here something is disappearing. In the absence of giving the senators those powers to go around and engage with both the county government and the citizenry, then I think we are throwing good money after bad money. And it must stop somewhere. And the only way this can be stopped is by senators not going to kneel down to the governors, but by them appearing to be the watchkeepers on behalf of Parliament. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of gender, for those of us who have been long enough in this August House, our women colleagues have approached us severally to actually talk about this issue of two-thirds gender. But we have sat on our hands. And yet, the reason why today we have increasing numbers of women members of Parliament is because we have given the few, through affirmative action, the hands upon which they will be able to stretch the muscles of other young women leaders. Unless this is entrenched, unless we look for a formula to get enough women to be in this house, then I think it will not be possible for them to get the chance to occupy the highest offices in this land. So that we don't appear to be giving women favors or like handouts, let them be given opportunity to exercise their leadership in this house. I think the thinking that the president has brought on board is noble, it is doable. I think as a house, we must rise to the occasion. Finally, Honorable Speaker, the issue of leader of opposition. People can deny it, but the House or a country without opposition, the government can tend to do what we saw happening after the handshake. Initially, we had a very strong and robust opposition in the last parliament. But as soon as there was a handshake, the opposition was killed. And the government of the day did whatever they wanted to do with hubris and despotic approach to many issues. And for that reason, I think when we borrow from other jurisdictions, and we do that from the US, from the UK, and we have seen that it is the opposition that puts the government on its toes. And I think we as a House must actually for once put aside our political philosophies that sometimes is not Kenyan. The different sides of the divide borrow different philosophies, but we do what is good for this country. And finally, I said the ministers appearing before the House. Severally, the chairmen have been coming to the House with statements and reports. And we ourselves have been challenging those members to the extent that we tell them that you guys are just messengers. You will not be able to convince us. Now, the president is saying, guys, I want to give you my ministers to come and respond to your questions. And we are saying no. So sometimes we must ask ourselves, what is it that we really want as a House? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, honorable members. We have barely less than 30 minutes to go. So I want to encourage those of you who are going to get time to be as targeted as Honorable Dido Raso. If you can, be done within less than 10 minutes, be done so that colleagues get the time. The Honorable Beatrice Kimei, the gentle lady from Kericho County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this general debate on the proposal by His Excellency, the President of Parliament, to consider amending the Constitution. And Mr. Speaker, many members have spoken to the same, and I want to start by appreciating what the members have said. And constitutional amendment is not something new. In Kenya, the first Kenyan constitution has been amended severally. Even America, they have amended their constitution over around 27 times. India, over 90 times. Mr. Speaker, it shows that the importance of amending the constitution is actually to adjust provisions that are inadequate. And to add to that, Mr. Speaker, it shows that amendments are necessary to correct the national weaknesses and, of course, to adapt the changes that come with it. In this case, Mr. Speaker, just the way other members have spoken, there was the PPI that, of course, had some good part of it. And I remember the president looked at it. He also spoke to it and said there are good side of the PPI and there are those areas that needs to be corrected. However, it never saw the light of the day. So in this case, Mr. Speaker, I want to, in a very special way, appreciate the fact that it is coming to us to look and to speak to it. Mr. Speaker, sir, the 4 issues that His Excellency forwarded to us to speak to are very important. Maybe to start with is the NGCDF and the NGAF. Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate the members who have been here before. They have worked hard using the NGCDF and NGAF. And Mr. Speaker, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, in a few minutes, gave us what is done with the NGCDF. I want to congratulate him for that and the many other members. However, I was only in a way unhappy and disappointed that he never mentioned the NGAF, which is actually a national government affirmative action fund. But I appreciate the members who have spoken to it. Mr. Speaker, when we were in Mombasa, you realize that we didn't have the minority, the majority, the opposition, and the government. All of us spoke to this very, very important, the important funds. Because even now, Mr. Speaker, back in the counties and in the constituencies, our children, others have gone to school, others are waiting for the bursaries. So this is very, very important. So when the president brought this one in to be anchored in the Constitution, it has meaning, and we will not be having people going to court against it. We will not be having people speaking against it. And with this knowledge that NGCDF and NGAF, members of parliament who are here, are just doing the oversight role. And I wish Honorable Oundo was here so that I would speak to him and let him know that women reps are also members of parliament, because he talked of MPs and women reps. We are also members of parliament. Now, Mr. Speaker, NGCDF and NGAF has done so much. The only difference is that for the women reps being given the NGAF, which is slightly less than 7 million per constituency, while for the MPs it is over 130, I believe so. But still, even with that, it has done so much. We've spoken to widows, single mothers, orphans, elderly, and even children, fighting the gender-based violence, which is not only affecting girls and women, it is also affecting boys and men, and we are speaking to that. So I want to support this, that NGCDF and NGAF should actually be anchored in the law. Same to the Senate Oversight Fund. I support it, Mr. Speaker. Why am I saying so? If you look very keenly, you will realize that people who go to Senate, to what I normally hear from the village, are people who already, they are satisfied, they already have what they needed, because they say there's no money in the Senate. So, and then they do so much of oversight. So I also support that, Mr. Speaker. Now, coming to the gender, the 2/3 gender rule. We waited in the last parliament, the 12th parliament, for members to pass it. The unfortunate part of it is that it was not passed. And this time, I've just listened to members. Others are not sure of what the president has. He actually was speaking to gender rule, what it means. From what I understand, of course I know it will still come to the House. It's not that we will have many, many members who are actually just to fill in the space. But now, we will not have extra members. That is why some members were talking of, we don't want to have 10 billion. It is not that, Mr. Speaker. If we have 47 members, and the top-up from nomination should come from the gender that is less. And this does not mean it is only the women. I don't know why there's this misunderstanding that when we talk of the two-third gender, it is talking about women. We are not lesser. It is only that from the past, people didn't understand who women are and their ability. But now, I want even to appreciate that we have the CSS, the PSS, and the many MPs, senators, and all that, leaders, women leaders. So with time, people would understand. Mr. Speaker, it is very interesting that even back and in our constituencies and counties, people say, let's have the seat for women, that is the women's woman rep seat, and then the others are for men. But let people understand, women are also leaders. So I will appreciate when this one is also anchored in the Constitution. It will give women strength. And don't forget, Mr. Speaker, we have also been speaking and talking about the boy child. At the moment, as members have said, and even me, I know, girls are working very hard in schools. Even when the results are out, girls are doing good and they are doing well. We have boys who need to be mentored, who needs to be encouraged. And in future, we do not know which gender is actually supposed to be assisted. That is the more reason why this two-third gender rule should actually be upheld in the Constitution. Now, having the leader of opposition being actually appreciated and having an office, I support it very strongly. Having a strong opposition is key, Mr. Speaker. At least to give checks and balances in the functioning of the government. And even to support this one more, to give constructive criticisms, criticism of the government, the policies, the plans, the bills, the laws, and the programs of the government. And even to make the government work for the people, to support the social welfare, and to do good to the public. So having an opposition leader, having that honorable office is key. And I believe with this, people will not be talking of handshake, people will not be talking of mkate nusu, people will not be against when a leader comes out to go to the public and maybe to harass us, people will not be saying it is because they are looking for this. They will have their honorable place, maybe in parliament, and even in this case, it will be good for them. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to say the CSS being in the House is not a bad idea. However, as much as maybe we have committees, there are things that we may not speak to, we may not have enough time, but we will want to listen more of what the president has in this. Some of us may not even know up to the end of the 5 years who the CS was, who the PS was, we may not know the ability.
Is Honorable Joses Lelmengit, the gentleman representing Mgwen in the House. Okay, then let us have the Honorable John Gitonga Manyata for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me say I'm privileged to give my opinion on this memorandum. And Honorable Speaker, I will not waste any time. I'll go straight to my thoughts. Number one, I want to actually say the President has conjured a very good debate, a debate that is enriching what we are supposed to be doing in this House. And Honorable Speaker, the issues that the President has brought across in this House are issues that are not to his benefit. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at all these issues. I see them benefiting this House, and some benefiting even his opponent, who he competed with in the last election. Honorable Speaker, the issue of two-third gender rule is an issue that has been very pertinent in the debate in this country. And Honorable Speaker, while you gave your submission, I was very keen on your opinion on solving this issue. And I want to say that, yes, this issue is in the Constitution. And so there is a need to know how to solve it. It is not an issue that cannot be solved. But the formula the President is bringing is a formula that can actually solve this thing once and for all. Honorable Speaker, it is not a wonder if we have the current CJ giving the same declaration Maraga gave a few years ago, that the government should be dissolved. And the more we sit on this issue, Honorable Speaker, we are losing, and we are actually not getting to where we are supposed to get as the 13th Parliament. And I feel this Parliament has what it takes to look at these recommendations by the President and come up with something that can be able to help the two-third gender rule to be finalized one and for all. And we don't even have to talk much, because we know the gender rule is a rule that can apply both ways. It is important to note that the increase that we are talking about of the few members of Parliament will actually remove us from a very huge quagmire that this country has on it being constitutionally okay as of right now. And if we do that, then I know, Honorable Speaker, we will be able to ensure that the next election, now we can put in the measures that the political parties can be able to actually implement. On the issue of CDF, Honorable Speaker, I thought I have more minutes. On the issue of CDF, Honorable Speaker, it is important to note that right now we are in a big challenge, that our kids are at home and many parents are actually reeling in trouble because their kids are not yet in school. Honorable Speaker, the issue of putting CDF and GAF in the Constitution will make it solid that nobody can joke with that fund, and I fully support that recommendation. Although it's important to note that I wouldn't like to put all these things together, that one fails and the other one does not cannot be able to move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gitonga. The gentle lady from Moiben constituency, the Honorable Phyllis Bartow. Again, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise on behalf of the people of Moiben constituency to make my pronunciation on the memoranda by His Excellency, the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak on two issues, on the gender rule and on the NCDF being enshrined in the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, these issues which the President has brought to the House for us to debate are very important. Reason, this is a President who has been a former member of Parliament, ranking for that matter. He has rose through other ranks to become the Deputy President and to be the president of Kenya as at present. So it means he has a lot of experience, a lot of insights on giving the directionality on, on what we need to borrow. Mr. Speaker, the issue of NCDF being entrenched in the Constitution is very important. Kenyans are very litigious. We like rushing to court, even on issues which are not, even to put bottlenecks on issues which are important to the nation. For example, this NCDF, at the moment, we have a case in court. We are not even able to dispense any or to do any development at our constituencies because the money which has been dispensed is a very small percentage. It took the intervention of members of parliament when they went for the retreat in Mombasa to raise their voices for the executive to decide whether they want to give it or not and give it in piecemeals. Up to now, what we have is very little. The financial year is coming to an end. So it is very important that we entrench this in the Constitution, the NGAV, and the oversight fund for the senators, because they also need to be empowered. To be able to lead people, you must have the capacity, and you have to be well empowered for you to serve. So I think it is very important, and I know even if we went for public participation, Kenyans are very ready to give a nod to this NGAV, NCDF, Senate Oversight Fund, because they know the importance. They felt, they have seen this fund transforming their lives. And I want to underscore the fact that it is not money for the member of parliament. In fact, if anything, there is nowhere where that money gets to the hand of a member of parliament. It is for the people to develop and to transform the lives of the people. So I think it should be done expeditiously so that it is stabilized. On the issue of gender, to that gender rule, this conversation has come of age. Since the times of Beijing until now, we are still having debates on gender. We are still not meeting the two-third gender rule. Last time when we went to Mombasa for induction, we were with colleagues from all parts of the world, from Tanzania, from South Africa, and even outside Africa, and they gave testimonies of how they are ahead. They have made the two-third gender rule. But for us in Kenya, we are still struggling. It's high time we entrench this in the Constitution and do it for final so that we move and go to address other issues other than going round and round dealing with the same issue. My time is up and I can end there, Mr. Speaker, because I had only indicated I was making my pronouncement on two issues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For those wise presentations, the Honorable John Waluke for 5 minutes.
5. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance also to contribute on this, although there's no much time. Honorable Speaker, the President of this country meant well for the 4 issues that he wrote to the Speaker of the National Assembly for us to discuss about. Mr. Speaker, one is NGCDF. Honorable Speaker, we get little money, Mr. Speaker, as a constituency, even you as our Speaker. It's only about 131 million shillings. Compared, like where I come from, my county, Mr. Speaker, my county governor gets 12 billion. But, Mr. Speaker, you cannot compare. It is like day and night. The work that is seen in the counties, Honorable Speaker,
is quite different. You can see maybe one project in a year, while you can get more than 20-something projects that has been done by that little money, including paying fees, bursaries for our children, Mr. Speaker. Like in my constituency, I'm paying for 5,000 children, Mr. Speaker, all the money that I was given. So, Mr. Speaker, the Senate should be given money, and enough money, Mr. Speaker, for oversight. We want the Senate to oversight this money, to see where this money go to, what does the money to from the county, because all the billions are synced somewhere, Mr. Speaker, and the money is not seen. Mr. Speaker, the other one is about women of this country. Mr. Speaker, Gao should be given money. Our female MPs are equally like us. So their money should not be delaying. The way it has been delaying, they should be given money. We want to see what they are also doing with their money, because they have cried for long that the money delays. So when our money comes, Mr. Speaker, we want to see our women also get that money so that we compete in our county to do development. Honorable Speaker, we need to be very careful with the Constitution. You have been here, Honorable Speaker, I know, with me 3 terms. You remember the 11th Parliament and 12th Parliament. We passed very bad laws. One is the security bill, and the other one was finance. And Mr. Speaker, it came from, let's say, the retired president. But later on, Mr. Speaker, we have seen and blamed ourselves that the laws that we passed at that time, Mr. Speaker, was not good. So our president has requested for us to amend and insert, and it is a test to us as members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, to go through those requests. If there is one that is not suiting us, Mr. Speaker, we will not pass it. But if they are all good, we are going to pass them, Mr. Speaker, because if they are good for the country, why not? Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament in this House, some, I cannot say all members, but some get excited when they see a bill or a motion without reading it carefully. They get excitement. But we need to tell them that read and understand very well, so that you get excited when you pass either a bill or a motion. So it is up to us, all of us, Mr. Speaker, as a House together.
Thank you very much, Honorable Waluke. The MP for Banisa, Honorable Kuluasan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, at the inception, I want to thank the people of Banisa for giving me a second term. Mr. Speaker, this is due to the fact that I had initiated a wide range of transformation in Banisa, including roads, water sector, police housing, airstrip, and etc. And I will ensure that I will work for the people of Banisa in the second term and ensure that they get their democratic dividend. Mr. Speaker, on the debate that is before us, I would like to support the memoranda presented by the President. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to quote from The Riches of the Earth, a book written by Frank Fanon, and this he said, each generation must out of relative obscurity establish its mission, fulfill it or betray it. And it is in fulfilling this mission that Honorable His Excellency, Mr. Ruto, initiated this memorandum. Mr. Speaker, one of the items in the memorandum is the leader of opposition. Mr. Speaker, every country which has good democracy must have a leader of opposition. And leader of opposition is there to establish shadow cabinet, shadow ministers, come up with alternative policies to that of the government. And this is because of this, it is important as a country we have a leader of opposition. And Mr. Speaker, today our leader of opposition is automatic. Is the person is the leader of the second majority leader, and it is none other than Raila Amolo Odinga. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this of Raila Amolo Odinga, and allow me to paraphrase from the Rivonia trial of Nelson Mandela in respect to Raila Odinga, a man of good standing, a senior citizen in this country. And this is what Mandela said, which in reference I'm making to Raila. During his lifetime, Mr. Raila Amolo Odinga has dedicated himself to the struggle of the Kenyan people. He has fought against the Kalenjin domination. He has fought against the Kikuyu domination. He has cherished the ideal of democracy and free society in which all Kenyans live together in harmony and equal opportunity, an ideal for which he is prepared to live and to achieve, and an ideal for which he is prepared to die. It is with these befitting words I want the office of the opposition to be given to our respectable leader, Raila Amolo Odinga, and therefore I support President Ruto's initiative for the creation of office of the opposition leader. The second item, Mr. Speaker, is the question of to third.
Order, Honorable Hassan. Honorable Hassan, how many minutes will you have? You'll have 6 minutes when the debate will continue on this motion from tomorrow.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Speaker.
So be keen on the order paper, because when it starts, Parliament will start with you.
Thank you.
Members, the time being 3 minutes past 7:03 p.m., this House stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 16th February 2023 at 2:30 p.m.
Kuja uchukue simu ya mashuka. Asiseme sisi tunaenda na Good morning to you, and you're right on time for the National Assembly live proceedings. This being a morning sitting of the National Assembly on the 15th day of February, the year is 2023, a sitting that usually takes place at 9:30. The House resumed its normal sittings yesterday afternoon after a long recess and after concurrence of the members to be sitting in the House Business Committee, a crucial committee for the legislative agenda under the 13th Parliament. Today, the House commences its business with about 4 procedural motions kick-starting the order of business today. And these particular motions are on the limitation of debates on bills sponsored by parties or committees. Another procedural motion, another motion that will be moved by the leader of majority, is limiting the debate on